Most students think it's wrong to move their scapula. I'm supposed to squeeze my shoulder blades together. No.
Right.
Not when your arms are going overhead. That's, unless you're extremely hyperkyphotic, that's not a movement that we want. We want the scapula to widen. This is essential for downward dog. And it's one of the things that saved my shoulders, was ignoring teachers when they say to squeeze their shoulder blades together when the arms are coming overhead.
It's so helpful to be able to work with the shoulders as like all of the joints, but working with that joint, right? Because if I'm just always thinking, I got to use my neck, I got to use this, my forward shoulder, and I'm sure you see this, but it seems like such a common thing that happens is this biceps tendonitis, right? Where people then no longer can lift their arm up. They can't reach up and grab stuff anymore. And that really seems to be a chronic issue that...
Why do you think it's bicep tendonitis and not a rotator cuff issue?
It could be referred pain, but the pain is in the...
That's a referral from the supraspinatus.
Okay.
And that's the most commonly injured rotator cuff muscle, and it is active in those last 30 degrees or so of shoulder abduction before you get to parallel to the floor.
Yeah.
And so that's when you start to see that. And people are like, oh yeah, I have pain in my deltoid, or
right,
because it's just referring right down that line.
So then when I'm trying to get them some release, right, I'll definitely work up in the shoulder. But they still, well, you know, my client's lived a lot of life, but, you know, she can't bring her arm out really at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple of things.
She can pull it back, not forward.
So, yeah, they can only jerk the elbow back. Yeah. They can't move the head of the arm bone back.
Right.
And that has a lot to do with their inability. Is she kyphotic as well?
Not really. She's got decent posture.
Okay.
Sure. I think, you know, the pain started and... you know, at this stage of the game, she's like, I'm not using it. Right. Well, it just kind of deteriorates and becomes more painful. So then she'll get a shot, a cortisone shot, whatever. And, you know, that works for a little bit. And then you can get in there and try to do some repair work, but then it hurts again. And, you know.
Well, there's something called the arthrokinetic response, which is extremely active in these shoulder movements. If the brain senses instability, it freezes the movement.
Yeah, yeah.
So then you're dealing with that freeze response in the brain saying, this is unstable. So then I think the first step would be work with the posture and get the lift of the chest and then make sure they're not swaying back. So sometimes it looks okay, but actually the top of the rib cage is leaning back. But then you've just got to get scapular movement.
Yeah.
To me, I'm a scapula girl.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about, like, are these scapula moving at all? Because that's the socket.
Do they have freedom? Yeah.
Right. And the rotator cuff muscles are on all the sides and edges of the scapula. It's this amazing bone with amazing muscles on it. And so that is governing and regulating a lot of these reflexive responses. Right. So if we can get that scapula mobilized, there's up, shrugging, down, depressing, abducting, widening, adducting, narrowing. But then we've got this rotation.
Yeah.
And so getting fingertips on shoulders.
That's super good.
Getting people to mobilize, get some collarbone movement here, get some scapular movement here, get some rotation happening in the upper arm. This is a little bit easier than trying to do big, huge arm circles.
Although I love doing big, huge arm circles. Well, my favorite therapeutic practices I do is lying on your side, take a bolster or a block so you can take your top leg and bend the knee and rest there, right? That's just going to keep you from tipping off. Reach both arms out from you so they're perpendicular to your torso, and then take the top arm and you're just doing a big 360 degree, but you're going slow enough that you find out where you need to pause, right? And you come in and out of it. And then usually you can get a little more range of motion, right? There's an internal, there's an external rotation. Your armpit gets a nice stretch. The pec gets a nice stretch. And then there's neurological stuff you can do where you start following the gaze in reverse of your arm. So you move that around and disrupt patterns. And then we did laying on the back with your arms in cactus and trying to rotate the forearms up and down, you know, keeping the shoulder heads back.
all this Feldenkrais stuff has merged into yoga. A lot of yoga senior teachers are bringing in this Feldenkrais kind of sliding, mobility
and
range.
gliding.
It's becoming a lot of, I think it's great if they were keeping the head of the arm bone back, because a lot of times there's so much scapular movement.
Oh, yeah.
So as you're trying to rotate the upper arm and isolate humeral rotation, external, internal rotation, that scapula is not supposed to move.
No, and that's why this is okay to do on the arm, where you're basically stabilizing the person's shoulder so that when they try to rotate, they're restricted to what you're trying to actually work with. That's the thing, is if you bring your whole head of your shoulder forward, then you're not doing the work we want to do.
Yeah. If that scapula is moving, then this rotation is not coming from the correct place.
Yeah.
And working with respecting that limit, and even having students, if you're doing it in a group class, having them place the opposite arm across the chest, place the hand under the scapula, and just feel like, oh, is that bottom tip of the scapula poking backwards into the floor every time you try to go into internal rotation. Well, then you have to firm the muscles that hold that in place there, and then try to rotate the upper arm. Call this the Hello Kitty exercise, waving its arm here. Getting that movement to be very accurate, because people go for range. All yoga students are going for range, and they're going for sensation. And this should be almost sensationless when it's correct. And it's not about pushing and looking for sensation. It's looking for precise movement.
Right. Okay. So what is biceps tendonitis then? Because I know obviously it's tendonitis. It's an inflammation in the tendons that attach to the bicep.
I think that's running here more than from the deltoid.
You could probably have both, right?
I'm sure you could have multiple things going on at once. And as movement teachers, the pathoanatomic root of like, where's the injury doesn't matter as much as we're looking at a movement pattern. How's your scapula moving when it's supposed to move? How is it stable when it's not supposed to move? How is your humerus, your upper arm bone? How can that move? And then how can it not move when we're trying to isolate the pronation and supination of that forearm?
Yeah.
We're training people how to move. I don't care what your pathoanatomic stuff is, other than hopefully people aren't coming in an acute situation. I can be mindful of that, but I can't treat that.
Right.
So I have no idea how, but we are movement people. How can we train people posturally to stand and hold themselves with their shoulders in a better position? That we are qualified to do.
Right.
And then how can we train them to move more accurately, more precisely,
more efficiently?
And the number one thing that I see with students is they cannot move their scapula. They're not moving their scapula at all.
Right.
They're locking their back into place by shoving the shoulders down and squeezing the scapula together. And then they're trying to get humeral movement, upper arm movement with a fixed scapula, and they're shredding and frying their rotator cuff muscles.
Yeah.
That scapula has to move with the arm at a certain rate, right? 2 degrees of humeral movement for every 1 degree of scapular movements when the arm is going overhead in deflection. And what I see with most yoga people, most people who come in with shoulder issues, the scapula is relatively frozen and the arm is doing all the movements. And so they're just hitting up against the bony structure of that acromion process, right where that supraspinatus tendon is, and gradually fraying it over dozens and thousands of repetitions.
Yeah. I love doing myofascial work along the shoulder blades, like taking a nice myofascial ball. I really recommend the yoga tune-up balls because they're grippy. They're good because you can go over bony structures without injuring it. I first initially liked the cork ball because you get more sensation, but it's not as kind to your body. But if you roll along the inner seam of your shoulder blade, like you're trying to tuck the ball underneath the blade, because so much of this stuff is restriction in the tissue from fascia that's kind of frozen in place. And fascia gets stickier and stickier and thicker and heavier the less we move it, right? So even overnight, it gets stickier and thicker, which is why when you wake up, you're like, oh my God, I'm so sore, right? Because this fascia has come in and taken hold, right? And as we age, especially women, as we're postmenopausal, we're not as hydrated. we don't have that lubrication. So we have to move all these bony structures around and the tissue around so that we can continue to give us the opportunity for the joints and the bony structure to slide and glide and move with ease.
Yeah, and that's when the frozen shoulder comes in. It's like the menopausal 55-year-old female injury is this frozen shoulder when this gets shut down.
Yeah.
How can we get some passive movement in the upper arm bone to be able to slide the arm in and out of the socket? I think we did this with another episode, but even if we have the arms straight out in front of you, if you rotate the entire arms so the palms face out and the thumbs are down, that's internal rotation. And then you can take one of your hands and place it under the opposite upper arm, and then passively draw the arm bone forward out of the socket, and then softly draw it back into the socket and start to find the Goldilocks place where it's not so far out of the socket, which is the most common place for it to be, and then to draw it back into the socket without jamming it back.
Yeah.
And then passively lifting the arm. So we internally rotate the arm, draw it back into the socket, and then start to manually lift the forearm until it's alongside the ear, pausing when you get stuck to draw the head of the arm bone further back again if you get stuck. And then it's alongside the head. Then we can drop the forearm, the hand, and now we've got that upper arm of Gomukhasana. We can then spin the upper arm so the elbow faces forward. Now we're in external rotation. Even though the back of the arm is rolling towards your face, that's external rotation. And now we're training this shoulder flexion position that we need for downward dog, warrior one, reaching up into the cabinet, putting on a shirt overhead, this essential shoulder function that gets lost and diminished over time.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's even you're doing your handstands, all that kind of stuff. You want your arms to be, available to set yourself up for support.
Right. This was all arm rotation cueing, but then realizing that when that arm is in the correct place overhead, the bottom tip of the scapula has wrapped around the side of the rib cage into this upward rotation. It's swung wide and the whole scapula's come around into upward rotation. And then the bottom tip lines up with the midline of the side body. And that's something that students can feel for themselves. They can locate that bottom tip, move an elbow forward and back, and feel like, is that scapula moving with enough rotation to support the arm bone?
Right.
So even though we cue the arm bone almost exclusively in yoga, I feel like we need to start cueing the dead zone. This is like a dead zone in the body. Around the scapula, it's the fewest nerve endings in the entire body. So this is where we need to build up that map. It's like a blank page,
right.
And you're building up that map proprioceptively and checking with your fingers to make sure, using your hands as a yoga teacher to train to help cue that rotation so the scapula can be in the proper place to support a handstand.
Yeah.
Because if that scapula has not upwardly rotated and you're doing a handstand, it's either collapsing and ruining your wrists,
right,
or the wear and tear on the top of the shoulder.
I almost think like forearms just get in the way of good arm movement because, when I'm paying attention to my forearms, I'm paying attention to how far I can get. And then I start using my neck. I start lifting up here. But if I'm just thinking about the upper arm and I understand that it's working in relation to the head of the shoulder. So as the distal part of the upper arm moves up, then the head of the shoulder needs to be kind of coming into the socket, not lifting up too, right? Does that make sense?
I'm watching your shoulder.
So this is what you see a lot of people reach up and then they lift up. They use their traps to get up farther away.
Well, and they use their traps because the traps is assisting in that upward rotation of the scapula, but the scapula is not fully upwardly rotating. So as the rotator cuff gets disabled, injured, unused, the upper trap is the only thing helping to assist that movement. So it's a clue rather than, and I'll push your shoulders down, it's a clue that person, the client or the students don't understand how to move their shoulder blade, or they think it's wrong. Most students think it's wrong to move their scapula. I'm supposed to squeeze my shoulder blades together. No,
right.
Not when your arms are going overhead. That's unless you're extremely hyperkyphotic, that's not a movement that we want. We want the scapula to widen. This is essential for downward dog. And it's one of the things that saved my shoulders was ignoring teachers when they say to squeeze their shoulder blades together when the arms are coming overhead. Students should know when you're feeling arm movements in the wrong places. So I would say the wrong place is the armpit, the wrong place is the top of the shoulder. The wrong place often is the front of the shoulder, but you do stretch the front of the shoulder with that bottom arm in Gomukhasana or when the arms are in reverse namaste.
And we want that because that's, don't you kind of want it because it's, it's the opposite of what the habitual bad pattern is.
It is, but I think often I would always double check that student's arm because if the elbow is really far behind the body and that upper arm starts to get closer to parallel to the floor, that's just the head of the arm bone collapsing forward. Yeah. So that hand has to go much lower on the body. The student needs to lift the chest and draw it back and then try to work with repositioning the arm. Now I feel, although I feel some sensation of stretch through the front, it's not just in the pec tendon, and it's not, I also feel a lot of work, muscular work, not stretch, but contraction, those muscles holding the head of the arm bone back.
Okay.
So keep it out of the top, keep it, be caution, yellow light when it's in the front. And then when your arms are overhead in shoulder flexion, we're definitely taking all sensation out of the armpit. One of the ways that you can check this is the armpit should be facing forward like a catcher's mitt. Like a catcher, when they're going to catch a baseball, the mitt is cupped and it's ready to catch something. And that's the rotator cuff holding onto the head of the arm bone, which is the ball. And so that armpit should not be facing out to the side. Right? It faces forward and it's cupped, especially when people are in Parshva Konasana is one of the best places to train that shoulder flexion and to spiral from the pinky finger to get that external rotation, to wrap the armpit around because you're not weight bearing. It's easier to get that armpit to face forward.
And again, we're talking about the extension not coming in. This is where the forearm problem is for me. I want the extension to come from the core. So it's either the side of the ribs, or as you're saying, make sure you have freedom in the scapula so the scapula can move, right? We're not just trying to kind of crunch on up above the core.
100%. I was saying get the spiral from the pinky finger is helpful. You'll feel the rotator cuff muscles engage. And Jane was saying the lift does not come from the distal part. You're right. It's the hoist, like you like to say. It's the hoist of the rib cage up. That's where you're feeling that lift.
Yeah. So in side angle, I'll often cue people to reach their top arm parallel to the floor, reach it away from them, and then, bring the shoulder head back into the joint. So you pull it back into the joint and then do what you'd said, like take a nice little sweep up overhead. And you get so much more range of motion that way too. And it feels really lovely.
And it connects to the back heel, which is the Parshva, the side of it. And I use the cue of like block the sun with your arm. And I want that arm really close to the face, parallel to the floor, wrap the arm close to the face so that we get away from this elbow pointing towards the ceiling, which is shoulder flexion with internal rotation. Yeah. Ouch, ouch.
Okay.
Yeah. So getting those rotations in the arm, getting the movement and the proper movement in the scapula, finding that on the floor where there's more tactile feedback against the floor, working the independence of the forearm from the upper arm. We did a lot of that in downward dog.
Puffy armpits.
Yeah. Elevated, spacious armpits. Shavasana with arms wide so the armpits can breathe, the legs wide. We want to open up these places where the nerves and the arteries and everything's passing through.
Lots of lymph.
Right. Getting all this space open. It's always so closed down and compressed. What other poses can we work the shoulder extension in?
I use the shoulder extension in tons of poses, right? I'll do it warrior one. I'll find that, come to humble warrior. I like to do it.
Are you doing hands interlaced or strap? Or?
Well, the strap is frequently I'm too lazy to get a strap. So I'll interlace my hands and I have the webbing tight and then I pull the base of the palms away from each other. It creates a little more integrity in the clavicle and the shoulder joint. But the strap is best because that doesn't have any asymmetries. And you can get the strap, whatever length, really feels productive for you without doing harm, right? So
yeah, I feel like everyone's required to get the strap. So again, it's like everybody does the quote unquote remedial thing. And especially for women, we have this carrying angle. I'll show it here.
Oh yeah, the carrying angle is huge.
Yeah, as we stand, if we didn't have a carrying angle, the arm would be hanging straight down. And you can see my elbow hyperextending to do that. But if I just relax my arm, there's a little angle. I'll show it here. There's a triangle.
Yeah.
So you can measure that triangle between roughly the elbow and the outside of the hip. It makes this space between my lower arm and the outside of the hip.
And that varies a lot based on person to person.
Certainly men can have this, but it's extremely common with women is that our arms don't hang straight. We have wider pelvises. Carrying angle as though you were going to carry a bucket of milk or water from the well, as we were wont to do. But that the arm has this angle in it that prevents some of this straight-armed cueing that then we would see. So even when the arm is straight behind us, right, if we can spin the arm externally so the palms face forward, grab the strap there, pull the strap isometrically apart, now we have a chance to get the head of the arm bone to roll back. We're getting that external rotation in the upper arm, even though the arm is behind us in shoulder extension. Right. And that if you try to internally rotate the arm and interlace, especially because the hands are so narrow, you're just going to have so much anterior glide. The head of the arm bone moves forward and it rotates internally. It's very difficult for most people to keep the hand that narrow and roll the head of the arm bone back and lift that armpit chest. And so we're showing all of this if you want to look at the video.
It's the carrying angle too is really helpful because for me, if I'm standing in Tadasana, I let my arms hang around, I see where my wrists are, how far they are. And that's how wide I want my arms when I'm reaching my arms up overhead. If they come more narrow, then I run into hardware. I'm like bumping into the joint. But if I take them as wide as my carrying angle is, there's so much more freedom. So that's one of those things where you want to understand how your body is because the cues of just reach your arms overhead is maybe not the best thing for your body. So you can take them a little bit wider and see how it feels.
And that carrying angle will be visible when the shoulder's in flexion. So the arm will look relatively straight from the front, but it will be bent from the side view. And so if I can certainly straighten my arm more, but now I've hyperextended my elbow and I've pushed the head of my arm bone forward in the socket to do that. And one of the ways you can tell if the head of the arm bone is too forward in the socket, because that socket's still facing straight ahead like the catcher's mitt, but the socket has gotten really flat. And you can feel the head of the arm bone, it's gross, with your fingers. So if I push my shoulder head towards my chest enough, I can feel the bone. And I will feel this on students, and I can feel the hard bone here. So then if I'll cue them to bring the arm forward, internally rotate it, draw the head of the arm bone back, and then push open like we had Jane do, and then spin the arm externally and bring it back overhead. Now it's all soft and squishy. The armpit should not be visibly flat. It should be cupped and soft and no stretch, because for years I pressed my chest really close to the floor in downward dog and I would feel this deep stretch in my armpit, which I thought was very satisfying. But oops, turned out I was just messing up my shoulders.
Yeah, there's an awesome trigger point too in there in the way back of your armpit. If you can get way, way back there, there's a really sensitive spot where if you can release that tissue, it's going to help so much with like your neck and your jaw and stuff like that.
Cool. Is that like the lat or?
I don't know exactly. I'll have to go in there and do a little exploration on that.
It's tender.
All I know is like you stick a myofascial ball in there, go up against a cork block. It's pretty hard to get to, but it's really productive.
All right.
I feel like we've done a lot with the shoulders.
Right. Maybe we could briefly just talk about other shoulder extension poses. The most famous one is shoulder stand.
Yep.
But you can also certainly use the strap in
Bridge pose. And again, I would just universalize the strap for everybody. If you can keep the head of the arm bone back, you don't need a strap. But if as soon as that head of the arm bone comes forward, then you go back to using the strap and widening the hands. And once you can get it back, keep it back, great. You don't need the strap. But even pyramid pose is a wonderful I love
place.
doing that with pyramid pose.
Yeah. It's a nice counterbalance to the weight of your torso going forward.
Mm-hmm.
You used it.
Warrior 3. I like it with Warrior 3.
Tell me about that. And I think you said you even use Garudasana arms.
Yeah, I do. I do. There's something about, so the eagle arms, something about that is just, again, finding the midline, finding the core, which is so important. Like that hugging in and rooting down helps me find the stability. And it's the same thing with the arms behind me. There's something about being actively in my arms that also activates my core. I don't get the same thing when I reach my arms forward. It's too big of an ask, really, for my body to do well. But if my arms are slightly in front of me drawing in, that's going to, fire up my core. Everything's firing up in the midline, which is what I need to do Warrior 3.
And I literally have never tried that, and it's so cool. I want to try it.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to tell me what you think.
Yeah, and Warrior 3, as those, if you do that in shoulder flexion with the arms out, that's just obviously the most amount of work that now your back is holding the weight. Hopefully your glutes are firing up really strongly. It makes it more possible, but it's also more possible for the arms to hold themselves up using the back by drawing the head of the arm bone back. And a simpler pose would be a pointer dog, a great warm-up pose to teach spiraling the arm internally. We do that to bypass most of the rotator cuff muscles so that we can slide the head of the arm bone back, then go ahead and spiral it externally. Now the back muscles and the side of the ribs are holding the arm bone in place, not the top of your shoulder, not your neck, and certainly not your low back.
Mm-hmm. When you say pointer dog, do you mean bird dog? But just the
pointer dog, bird dog. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we need to find non-weight bearing positions for students to learn this arm work.
Yeah, and you do bird dog well on the floor. It's a huge core practice.
That's a great pose.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a foundational pose. All right, we're going to talk about some sort of twist next.
Yeah.
Episode.
Next episode. We have not twisted yet.
Yeah, is that crazy?
Should we do just a seated twist, or is that too boring?
I don't know. What's our most basic twist? I was thinking that we would get to the twist in Utkatasana.
We could get to it from
Utkatasana. We forgot. What's the most basic twist?
Low lunge with a twist.
Maybe we should
and
do
then high lunge with a twist.
We'll do Utkatasana with a twist, high lunge with a twist. We can
do low lunge with the twist.
Supine twist.
Oh, supine twists are great.
Supine twists are a landmine of trouble that I think would be very good
landmine of trouble.
These are our cool down poses where you just mess up everything you've achieved with the rest of your sequence. So, yeah,
I don't think
supine twists. Based on if you're a lumbar extension person or a lumbar flexion person, you need a different kind of cool down twist, and not everybody can do the same twist. You will mess it up for half your class.
Ooh.
We could just do supine twists.
I guess we're starting with supine twists because first of all, we're going to get a ton of information. Secondly, I'll get to learn why I'm teaching half my class the wrong thing. And then I'll get to challenge back and say, no. I think they're getting a lot of benefit out of it. Definitely the twists are going to be fun.
Yeah. So if a supine twist twists the lower body against a stable upper body, then we should do a thoracic twist, which would either be seated or in the lunge or something. And I guess we have introduced the twist in Warrior 2.
Well, a little bit. And then I think the twist can go so far because there's twisting. There's also twisting dynamically, which is a really soothing thing for the nervous system. Yeah, twist got a lot. And it's also one of the things that we really want to tend to and continue to develop, because I often see people where their pelvis and their ribs act as though they're one unit, and we don't want that.
Yes.
We want them to disaggregate and move independently. So I'm not sure if yes, I have changed my perspective, and I will work with the pose and see if I can befriend it. Or I'll try to understand, what is it that's causing this aversion?
I want to see you do Garudasana arms.
No, I'm not doing.
Please. Let's lift your arm really high and try it.
Like
we start with your arm in the socket.
Okay.
So we just bring the arm back. Yep. Yeah. And then the same with the other arm.
Okay.
Yep. And then try to hook the elbows and they'll widen. Good. And then what's the... You're doing it perfectly.
Oh, I like these. Yeah, this one I like.
Well, then what's
It's the reverse prayer that kills me, or
so you like Garudasana?
I kind of like it.
You're doing it perfectly.
Yeah, except for the fact that I can't cross my shin anymore because I guess my my hips aren't working, or my thighs are too wide, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a little ego thing, but I can get over that. And then when I bend into it really deeply, I enjoy it, but then I come out and I think I'm going to pass out.
Yeah. Okay. That's
so
fair.
There's that.
That's fair. But you do the arms lovely.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.